You know, folks, look at the world today, and you'll see the radical left trying to build walls everywhere, censoring your speech, telling you what to drive, and dividing us into neat little identity boxes. But if you want to see what happens when that communist control freak ideology gets its way on a massive scale, you just have to look at the history of Cold War Germany. After World War II, the Allies carved up Germany like a Sunday roast, and the Soviet Union grabbed the eastern half, promising a workers' utopia. What did they actually build? A giant, bleak prison camp. By 1961, things were so miserable in communist East Germany that people were fleeing by the millions to the capitalist, free market West Germany just to get a decent meal and a taste of freedom. So what did the Soviet puppets do? Did they fix their broken system? No. They built a wall, the Berlin Wall, a massive concrete monstrosity with barbed wire, attack dogs, and brainwashed guards ordered to shoot anyone who tried to escape the, quote, utopia. For nearly 30 years, West Germany thrived under capitalism, producing sleek cars, booming businesses, and actual liberty, while East Germans were stuck waiting a decade just to buy a miserable, plastic-wrapped Trabant car and being spied on by their own neighbors through the Stasi secret police. It was the ultimate, tragic, real-world experiment. Same people, same culture, divided by an ideology. On one side, freedom and prosperity. On the other, breadlines and tyranny. But the human spirit doesn't like being locked up forever. And by 1989, the whole communist house of cards came crashing down. The wall was smashed to pieces, and Germany was finally reunited. It's a history lesson the elites in Washington and Beijing should never forget, because freedom always wins in the prime time of history. And you'd think the world would have learned its lesson from that disaster, right? Wrong. Because today, the globalist elites look at that dark chapter of history not as a warning, but as a blueprint. They missed the whole point of why the wall came down. When Germany reunited in 1990, it wasn't just a win for the German people. It was a total, humiliating defeat for the entire socialist apparatus. The West didn't just beat the East. Capitalism absolutely demolished communism on the world stage. But look at what's happening right now in our own backyard. We've got bureaucrat class warriors trying to centralize control, telling you what you can think and tracking your every move, just like the old Stasi used to do. Only now they use algorithms instead of informants. They want the government to run your healthcare, your energy, and your schools, completely ignoring the fact that when the state runs everything, you end up with nothing. Just look at the contrast between the vibrant, wealthy streets of Frankfurt back then and the gray, hollowed-out blocks of East Berlin. That is the natural end state of big government. It strips away human dignity and replaces it with a compliance form. We can't let the radical left drag us backward into that kind of Cold War misery. The Berlin Wall proved that you can cage people for a few decades. You can threaten them, and you can ration their lives. But eventually, the desire for freedom boils over and tears the whole system down. We need to keep that flame of freedom burning bright right here, because if we lose it, there won't be a West Germany left for us to escape to. But let's talk about the real tragedy here, because the left is trying to rewrite this history as we speak. They want you to believe that the fall of the Berlin Wall was just some peaceful, inevitable bureaucratic mistake. They don't want to talk about Ronald Reagan standing at the Brandenburg Gate, looking the Soviet Empire dead in the eye and demanding, "Tear down this wall." That took backbone, folks. That took a leader who actually believed in the moral superiority of freedom over tyranny. Today, we've got leaders who go on apology tours, bowing to dictators and selling out American sovereignty to globalist clubs in Geneva and Brussels. It's the exact same weak-kneed mentality that almost let the Soviets swallow Europe whole back in the 50s. And let's not forget the media's role in all of this. Back then, the state-run media in East Germany, the old Neues Deutschland, spent 40 years telling the people that the breadlines were good for them, that the secret police were just keeping them safe, and that the West was on the verge of collapse. Sound familiar? It's the exact same playbook the mainstream media uses today to cover up the disasters of big government spending and open borders. They gaslight you into thinking that up is down and slavery is freedom. But the American people are smarter than that. We know that the lessons of the Cold War aren't dusty old chapters in a textbook. They are a living warning. If you surrender your liberty for the illusion of security, you end up with neither. The wall fell because freedom is a force of nature. And no matter how much the bureaucrats try to fence us in, the truth always finds a way out. Stay tuned, because up next, we've got to look at how today's modern-day Stasi is trying to police your backyard. And you know who's running that modern-day Stasi? The tech oligarchs and the climate hysterics. Look at what they're doing with these smart meters and 15-minute city schemes. They want to track your carbon footprint, ration your electricity, and tell you how far you're allowed to drive from your own house. It's the same old East German central planning, just wrapped up in a shiny green bow. Back in the 70s, the communists told the people they had to sacrifice for the collective good, which really just meant sitting in the dark while the party elites drank French wine in their private compounds. Today, the Davos crowd flies in on their private jets to tell you that eating bugs and turning off your air conditioning is going to save the planet. It's a total scam. They want to build a digital Berlin Wall around your bank account and your lifestyle. And if you dare to complain about it on social media, the government flags you as a disinformation threat. They've literally turned the Department of Homeland Security into a weaponized ministry of truth. They are terrified of an independent, self-reliant middle class because people who own their own homes, drive their own gas-powered trucks, and protect their own families don't need a nanny state to survive. That's why they hate the American heartland, just like the Soviet puppets hated the free-thinking citizens of the West. But here's the good news, folks. The blueprint for beating them is already written in the concrete chunks of that old wall. When you refuse to comply with the lie, the power of the bureaucrats vanishes. They can try to police your backyard, they can try to censor this show, and they can try to micromanage your life. But they're fighting a losing battle against human nature. We survived the Cold War, we beat the Soviet Empire, and we're going to beat this woke, globalist nonsense too. Because real Americans don't do breadlines, and we certainly don't do walls. So don't let them convince you that resistance is futile, because the folks in East Germany showed us exactly how it's done. They didn't have a free press, they didn't have the Second Amendment, and they didn't have podcasts or social media to organize. All they had was the truth and the absolute refusal to keep living a lie. Every week they gathered by the hundreds of thousands in the streets of Leipzig, holding nothing but candles, marching right past the armed riot police, chanting, "We are the people." That's the phrase that terrifies the ruling class more than anything else on earth. It reminds the bureaucrats, the tech CEOs, and the fake news anchors that they don't own us, they don't rule us, and their power only exists if we allow it. The left wants you to feel isolated, angry, and helpless, so you'll just throw up your hands and accept whatever new mandate they roll out next Tuesday. But look at history, folks. The Soviet Empire looked completely invincible right up until the exact second it shattered into a million pieces. That's the vulnerability of tyranny. It's heavy, it's brittle, and it requires total compliance to stand. The moment the people stop believing the propaganda, the whole regime turns into a ghost town. We are seeing the early cracks in their new digital wall right now, as common sense fights its way back into the mainstream, and people start demanding their country back. We've got a long fight ahead to clean out the rot in Washington and protect the freedoms our ancestors bled for. But if a bunch of starved, spied-on citizens could bring down the entire Soviet bloc without firing a single shot, then the American patriot can absolutely save this republic. Keep your head up, don't back down, and never forget that this is our country, not theirs. That is exactly why they are panicking right now. You can smell the desperation in the air from Washington to California. Because the fake news media and the establishment puppets realize they are completely losing control of the narrative. They spent years trying to convince you that patriotism is dangerous and that globalism is the future. But the American people just aren't buying the garbage they're selling anymore. We are waking up to the reality that we don't have to live under the thumb of a bunch of unelected globalist planners who couldn't even manage a lemonade stand, let alone a free nation. Just like the courageous souls in Berlin who finally grabbed hammers and chisels and started hacking away at that concrete symbol of oppression, everyday Americans are using their voices, their votes, and their economic power to smash through the left's wall of censorship and compliance. We're pushing back at school board meetings. We're voting with our wallets. And we are tuning out the state media networks that try to dictate what we're allowed to believe. The political establishment thought they could permanently divide this country into warring factions, keeping us distracted while they robbed us of our economic independence and our God-given liberties. But they underestimated the strength and the resilience of the American spirit. This country wasn't built by fearful bureaucrats hiding behind red tape. It was built by pioneers, rebels, and freedom fighters who looked at tyranny and said, "Not on our watch." The lessons of the Cold War are crystal clear. No wall is high enough. No secret police force is brutal enough. And no government propaganda is permanently extinguished the human desire to be free. The truth is breaking out. The tide is turning. And the power is shifting right back where it belongs, into the hands of the people. Thanks for watching tonight. I'm Jesse Waters, and this is Primetime. We'll see you tomorrow. And that is a wrap for tonight, folks, but don't you go anywhere, because the fight for the truth never sleeps, and The Five is coming up next to break down how the radical left is already melting down over everything we just uncovered. You know, they hate it when we look at history, because history is the ultimate kryptonite to their socialist fairy tales. They want you tucked in bed tonight, feeling defeated. But I want you going to sleep remembering that the Berlin Wall didn't just fall, it was pushed over by regular people who had finally had enough. That same grit is alive and well across this great country tonight, from the factories in Ohio to the ranches in Texas. So go kiss your kids. Thank God you live in the United States of America. And get ready to wake up tomorrow and keep winning. I'm Jesse Waters. This is my Prime Time, and we are just getting started. Good night. And as you transition into your weekend, remember this. The enemies of freedom are always working overtime, which means we have to stay twice as vigilant. They're going to spend the next 48 hours on their Sunday morning talk shows, spinning the same old web of lies, trying to convince you that up is down, that inflation is good for your bank account, and that big government is your friend. Don't buy it for a single second. Take a page out of the playbook of those brave Berliners. Keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and refuse to let the bureaucrats rent space in your head. We've got an incredible lineup of truth tellers ready for you, starting first thing Monday morning, to expose the latest power grabs the deep state is cooking up while you're trying to enjoy your backyard barbecue. Enjoy your family, stand tall, and let's make sure we keep this country the brightest beacon of liberty the world has ever seen. For the final time tonight, I'm Jesse Waters. God bless you, God bless America, and I'll see you right back here on Monday. But wait, before I let you go, I just got a breaking update on my phone from our producers, and you are not going to believe the sheer hypocrisy of this. It turns out that one of those very same climate change central planners who spent the last week lecturing you about your carbon footprint and telling you to turn off your air conditioner was just spotted boarding a massive gas-guzzling private jet to fly to a luxury resort in the south of France. You see, folks, this is exactly how the East German elite lived back in the Cold War. They had special elite-only grocery stores stocked with Western luxury goods, while the regular citizens were standing in 4-hour lines just to get a loaf of stale bread. The rules are always for thee, but never for me with these people. They want a total monopoly on comfort, a total monopoly on travel, and a total monopoly on power. But the joke is on them, because every single time they pull a stunt like this, the mask slips just a little bit further, and more everyday Americans open their eyes to the scam. We see exactly what you're doing. We see right through the fake virtue signaling, and we are completely done playing your rigged game. So go ahead, enjoy your caviar in first class, globalists, because back here in the real world, the American people are organizing, we are waking up, and we are ready to take our country back. All right, now I am officially out of time. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe, stay free, and I'll see you on Monday.